Okay, let's talk about something that was, until recently, perhaps recent years rather than recent months, was seen as the key global issue that many world leaders would worry about, talk about, but perhaps not in recent months. We're talking about Baku, Azerbaijan. It is the setting for the Global Summit on Climate Talks, world leaders meeting to work out how to rein in rising global temperatures. What are the hopes for a meeting when we know the incoming president of the world's richest economy, Donald Trump, is a known climate skeptic? His recent speech back in just a couple of weeks ago, Madison Square Garden in New York, talking about the Green Deal scam of Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, investment of hundreds of billions into the green tech economy, and also saying many times his catchphrase, drill, baby, drill. Notably also by their absence, the French President Emmanuel Macron, China's President Xi, India's Narendra Modi, the EU chief Ursula von der Leyen, the chief of the Commission. Let's remind ourselves, I mentioned Donald Trump standing on the environment, where his position is, or it often shifts depending on who we hear in an interview with him. But let's bring in Brice Lalonde, former Environment Minister in France. Great to have you on the programme, and perhaps we can step back a bit and bring some clarity and maybe some thoughts. Let's start on Baku. We've spoken in previous COP summits about the importance. It kind of feels like it's a forgotten meeting. How do you see this right now?
Well, it's true, the picture is quite grim. But, there were never high expectations on this COP because last year's COP was a good one. And this one is only going to speak about something which is a sort of a poison in conferences, finance. There's never enough money, and it's going to be the same thing this time in Baku. The agenda will be is how much do we need in money? So they want to make a new figure. You know that before it was 100 billion, you need to have 100 billion. The rich countries reached it, but now you have to have a new one. How much is it going to cost in the next years to combat climate change, to adapt to climate change? So they're going to discuss about that, and I'm afraid they'll never get to an agreement. So in my view, the most important item to discuss in Baku are carbon markets. Yeah. Carbon markets, it's something very important because it's the only way everybody on the planet, you, me, companies, states, can do something.
Reminder, so this is the idea that if you're using fossil fuels, you can kind of buy your way back into the markets by offsetting.
Yes, but not only you're talking about the oil producers or the people who burn oil, but anybody in the streets. Anybody can buy, give money for some project reducing emissions in the world, because the climate change is something global. So if you reduce your emissions in Africa, it's as good as if you reduce them in France. Yeah. So it's very important to be able to, it's a tool. You need to have tools in your agreement. So it has to be real, it has to be, it mustn't be greenwashing, so you have to work on it. Lots of people are now working on the integrity of these carbon markets. And it's on the agenda. It's one of the last items to be negotiated from the Paris Accord. So I'm waiting. I'm expecting that. Otherwise, I'm not expecting much. But I am angry against all these leaders who are not going to Baku. I think it's first disrespectful from the Azerbaijan country. After all, it's about climate. It's not about elections or civil rights or anything. It's about climate, and it's a United Nations process. So you should go there, because whatever the situation is, you have to do your job. You have to negotiate. You have to advance. You have to find solutions. And climate change emissions are going down in developed countries, but they're going up in China, India, Brazil. So there is a real important discussion. And I think, because now we're talking about Mr. Trump, of course, we don't know. Trump is, as you said, he's a skeptic. But with him, he has allies. He has Elon Musk. He has Kennedy. He has people who are not climate denials.
Yes, not big oil fans, Elon Musk.
Yes, exactly.
Who invest in green tech.
Yes, and remember, Trump was against electric cars. But now with Elon Musk, perhaps electric cars are not so bad after all, so perhaps there will be some discussions. But I mean, whatever, you have to do your job and work, and you have to reduce the emissions. And what's happening, which is great, is the solar energy is so incredibly developing in the world. It's incredible. It's going so fast. So there's hope, it's on both sides. You have to work hard. And if the United States is not going in these negotiations, well, it's going to let place to the China. It's going to be China leadership. So I think, America should think twice.
You've raised a number of issues that I want to, forgive the pun, drill down on a little bit. But let's hear first from the US future leader, because we're talking about one of the world's, if not the world's biggest oil producer at the moment, with the biggest greenhouse gas emitter and the most powerful economy. Let's have a listen to President-elect Trump. This was just a couple of weeks ago in New York.
We're going to drill a baby drill. And I will terminate the Green New Scam. And we'll cut your energy prices in half, 50%, within 1 year from January 20th. Is the fake news hearing that? Whoa!
Is the fake news hearing that? Well, you make a couple of very interesting points. First of all, Donald Trump is predictably unpredictable. So you mentioned the likes of Elon Musk. You mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as well, as very different opinions. And he did say on his victory speech, "You leave the oil to me, Bobby," didn't he? "You leave the oil to me." The other issue you pick up is the fact that we have all of these other leaders not there. Go back to the last major COP summit where we had Joe Biden and President Xi meeting before, doing kind of preparatory work to suggest we're really serious. Tell me about the House of Cards falling this time. Why they're not there, what you make of it?
I think they are not there because they think this COP will not be a smart one, will not be a good one. So they don't want to be there.
Is it because this is an odd number and therefore they're looking at COP30, which is Brazil next year?
Exactly.
Or is it more than that?
No, I think it's, well, things are not going so well. People in Europe, for instance, Europe was a leading continent on fighting climate change, but now all these economic reports on Europe falling behind China and United States. We have too much regulations. You have the Draghi report, which says perhaps you should lighten these regulations. And so there is a moment of backtracking a little, of doubt. Are we going too far on one side? Not enough economic strength. So yes, the moment is a bit difficult today. Yes, it's true, and I think it's very important that we understand that fighting climate change is a way also of gaining leadership in the future world. I am very concerned by the fact that the United States is rushing backwards, back to oil and to gas and even to coal, and that's not the way you're going to win in the race of the future. And if you, I was in China a few weeks ago. I was so impressed to see the importance of the investments in clean energy. It's incredible, and China is already having something like 80% of the market in photovoltaic and in windmills. It's incredible. And
you raised something very interesting there too, because what is Donald Trump's favourite word? It is tariffs. And if we're going to see 60% tariffs on China, perhaps 20% on Europe, depending on negotiations, what comes back, that will have, no doubt, won't it, an impact on China's green revolution.
Yes, you're right. But it's a real discussion, even in Europe, because, of course, now China is getting very good on electric cars. They are cheaper than the cars which are produced in Europe. And so if you want to fight climate, it's better, of course, to say, OK, let's have the Chinese cars. But if you want to be sovereign and if you want to not depend on another country, it's better to produce yourself the cars. So there's a real discussion there. But I mean, that's the world of tomorrow. To fight climate change, it's a fight. It's a struggle. It's not going to come like that. And so the fight is starting again. We already had that with Trump. United States is very diverse. You have governors, you have cities, which at the end in 2017, they said, we are still in the accord. So I think it's not going to be so simple. And I wonder, I don't know, I wonder if President Trump will be the same as candidate Trump. We never know that. He said something very important. He said, I'm going to stop wars. If that is true, I don't know how he's going to do it. But it's true that also wars doesn't go well with fighting climate change. I mean,
there's an effective world triage, isn't there? If there are big issues like 2 world wars, 3 world wars, look at the situation in Sudan, Ukraine.
Exactly.
We have the situation in Gaza, clearly, Lebanon. Let's just also look at the situation closer to home, because we have a situation now where President Macron will not be there, and it's an elephant in the room to look at as well, because you have Azerbaijan, relations at pretty low at the moment, given
That's
that
true.
post the conflict with Armenia, you have a situation with Azerbaijan being blamed for disruption in New Caledonia, the French overseas territory there. Navigate us through some of those issues.
You're right. You're right. And I am very sad about all this.
Do you think he should have gone?
Yes. I think he should have discussed with President Aliyev really frankly. And I think the French, we have a long friendship with Armenia. It's very old. It's a friendship with Armenia, but it doesn't mean Armenia was right, because if you remember, last century, I would say, I was a minister, and in 1990, Armenia invaded the Karabakh. And of course, everybody now forgot that. And you think it's Azerbaijan who invaded Karabakh. No, they took it back.
Yes.
And if it's
It's how distant memories can
international
go
law, they are in their right. So I think lots of French politicians who don't have memory, they should be careful. And I think whatever you think Azerbaijan can be, I think it's a nice country. They're doing their job. They're trying seriously to organize a COP, and we should help them to succeed.
Very interesting, because you're dealing with a young president, a young prime minister previously, now an older one, Michel Barnier, saying recently it's sometimes useful to have a wiser, older head, especially when it comes back to previous conflicts that
Exactly.
continue. Well, very quick, brief thought, because Emmanuel Macron has been the person to try to be the problem solver, speaking to Vladimir Putin for a long time. I just wonder if actually there's more to it, where you say perhaps he's missed a trick not being there, but I just wonder whether you think there's something else going on, whether it's not just about Azerbaijan, but he really thinks this isn't going anywhere, given what's happening with Donald Trump. There's no point, there's going to be no good news coming from Azerbaijan.
Yes, but that's not what we expect from a leader.
Yes.
We expect from a leader that he's persistent, and he goes on working on climate change, because he's always, he started the first time, when Trump was elected, he said, let's make the planet great again. So he should stay on that line. It's very important to have leaders who are persistent and stay on the same line.
And passion, like yours. Brice, delight to talk to you. Brice Lalonde, former Environment Minister in the French government. And a delight you'll be back with us soon, I hope.